Hey folks, welcome to Snowpal's Polyglot Software Development Podcast. Our guest today is Dan Nikas. Dan is a former homicide detective sergeant of 17 years. And Dan turned his policing skill sets to e-commerce in 2015 when he founded and ran Gear Bunch, turning over $4 million in its first year. Dan is an official Klaviyo partner, Facebook Blueprint lead trainer, and an in-demand keynote speaker at industry events worldwide. Dan, thanks for taking the time to chat.
No problems. Thanks for having me on today.
I'm quite excited about the topic that we had just picked before I hit record here. Given your experience and expertise, we can talk about a number of things, but we kind of narrowed it down to one item, and we'll start there and see where the conversation leads us. But before we get into the topic, and before I actually socialize the topic with our audience, if you could sort of give a brief introduction about yourself, Dan, to our audience, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So, look, I'm based over in Australia. For those that haven't been here, I'm on the east coast, which is in the same state as where Sydney is. So, a lot of people know where Sydney is. It's a fairly big country, but I'm in the same state as Sydney. I live in a little town called Yamba, which is a beachside town, and I get to choose to live there because I can do what I do from anywhere in the world. So, why not do it in a beautiful place? Like you mentioned, I'm a former homicide detective. I was a police officer for 17 years. Um, when that part of my career finished, I dove into online marketing because I didn't really know what else to do. I went straight out of high school into the police academy when I was 19. And so I never went to university. I never did a trade. I don't have a marketing background or a sales background. And I came out of the police and I didn't really know what to do. And I started doing a bit of research into online marketing and digital marketing and found that I just had a real knack for it. And that's been my career for the last 10 years. And it's afforded me a lot of opportunities. I started my own brand called gearbunch.com, which is a fitness apparel brand where we manufacture and ship items from the States where you're based. I've also, in that time, become a Klaviyo partner and also one of Facebook's lead trainers, or Meta's lead trainers now, as it's called. It's gone through that name change over the years. And born out of all this success and the trainings that I offer, and the robust nature of our internal team for our own brand, we launched our own agency called Elite Brands about 4 years ago, which we do offer meta advertising and also Klaviyo email marketing for brands, either B2B or B2C. So that's me in a nutshell. 3 kids. I love life. It's good that we're talking right now because we're 1-1 in the test series in the cricket. I don't know if you follow the cricket, but you guys absolutely smashed us in the first one and we got you back in the second one. So it's going to make an interesting third test that I'm looking forward to. So yeah.
Lovely. It's very very good. Glad to hear that. Dan, thanks for the introduction. We're going to talk a little bit about Australia. Hopefully, if time permits, towards the end of this session here. But that's awesome. And again, thank you for your service. Like I mentioned, you first responders, super important people. So much appreciated.
No problems. Appreciate the thanks.
So to the topic, right? So we're going to talk about email marketing. One of the things you mentioned was maybe we can start there and sort of go from there. About marketing you on meta platforms, right? Now we can start there and sort of dig deeper into the various meta platforms. And by way of introduction, right? We're a group of engineers who run the company. So like I mentioned to you, Dan, some things come naturally to us and other things not so much. So we make an effort in trying to learn those things, right? And marketing and sales is one of those items which I had a feeling that it would be difficult, but I'll be honest with you, I had no idea that it would be this difficult, right? Over the last year or so, where we've spent a decent amount of time alongside engineering and building software and trying to be able to sell it, whether it's B2C products that we own or B2B products like APIs, we've continued to face a number of challenges, and we try to learn and then make certain improvements. So that's sort of a quick background there. So that said, can you give us a quick introduction to what it means? We're going to talk email marketing. We're going to talk advertising on meta platforms. And again, the audience here is predominantly engineering and technical. So if you could just give us a 50,000 foot overview and then we can dig deeper.
Sure. Look, you're spot on that marketing comes naturally to some people and not to others. Just as engineering software comes naturally to some people and others, it's like a whole nother language it's like an alien language that they'll never understand, nor will they try. And this was what I found when I left the police. My skill set as a police officer, so my thing that made me who I was as a detective, was I had this great ability to talk to people, and I had a way to get people to do what I wanted them to do and making them think it was their idea. Now, what I didn't know at the time is that that was marketing. So I was getting them to take a certain action. And as a police officer, there was no reward for them at the end of that. If I was getting them to take a certain action, it usually meant that they were telling me something that they normally wouldn't tell people. And usually when they told me that, it was admitting to a crime, and the reward for them was they'd end up in prison. But I could still get people to talk to me and admit things to me and have conversations with me with no incentive for them to do so. So when I fell into online marketing and I started diving into it, that's when I found, hey, this skill is transferable. I'd spent a career finding people that didn't want to be found and getting them to do what I wanted them to do. Now, all of a sudden, here's the whole world is telling me everything about themselves, where they are, what they do, what they like. And when I talk to them and I convince them to do something, I still want them to think it's their idea, but the end of it is there's a reward for them, whether it is downloading and using your app, or buying a piece of clothing, or subscribing to a particular service. Whatever it might be, there was an intrinsic reward for them that made them happy. So I found it a much easier proposition than what I had done for my earlier career. So
Okay.
yeah, it's a different way of looking at it.
No,
And
I think it makes a lot of sense, right? And it makes a ton of sense. So let me ask you, what are if somebody's getting into this, let's take some stakeholders, right? Take them, bring them into the picture.
yeah,
So, like us as a company, we are trying to sell something, and that something could be an app to a B2C consumer or an API to a B2B consumer. Now,
yeah,
and on the other side, there is somebody who's maybe looking to buy something, or maybe is not even looking to buy something because they are not in the market for anything, but we're going to have to find them and convince them that, hey, that they would be better served if they actually used our product or service. So that, I'm just stating the obvious here, but what are some of the fundamental challenges that one needs to address from where you're sitting?
yeah. So look, let's address it from a meta advertising point of view, because email marketing, we don't cold email to B2C. We just can't do that. So B2B, yes, but B2C, no. So what we'll do is we'll focus our chat on B2C, because the principles are going to be the same, just the mechanisms of addressing that is going to be slightly different. So if we look at B2C, and this would probably be easier for everyone to use because most of us are consumers of any of Meta products like Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp or Messenger. We're in those environments or ecosystems already. So it'll probably be an easier explanation on what it is that we need to address and how we can do that on those platforms. So probably the thing when I'm looking at helping businesses, I need to look more often than not at what problems the product or service or app or bit of software solves for a person. Because if I can solve a problem for someone, then they're more likely to open up their wallet or get their credit card out and actually buy the product or service that I'm offering. Because as humans, we don't like having problems. And if someone offers us a solution, we will more than likely take that because it might create less pain, or it might give us more time back in our day. It might streamline our processes. It might make exercise more comfortable. There's a myriad of reasons. There's a lot of problems that people can have that we can solve. So if we can identify, instead of trying to sell a product to someone, we sell a solution to someone. Now, the way that we do that is initially we've got, in the US, we've got 220 million people sitting on the platform, on Meta's platforms, on Facebook, Instagram. There's a big audience there. So we'll take you guys as an example. You've got your Snowpal app. How do you market your app to 220 million people? The answer is, if you just went out and put one ad up and tried to do it, it probably would be a very expensive and not a very successful campaign, because not everyone wants your app. There's a very specific customer or person or individual that's looking to use your app. And that person is someone whose problem you're solving. So if you'd like, I can talk you through how we normally take this huge audience of 220
Oh no,
million.
absolutely, Dan. I think that'll be very interesting, but I'll also make the problem a bit more specific for you, right? Because we've done something exactly like that. For our B2C products, our app essentially, you can download it from the App Store or Play Store, and then we have a web app as well. We created a Facebook campaign, and I think I shared a podcast some time ago as to how do you go about creating a campaign, because none of us on the team had ever done that, and it
Yeah,
wasn't particularly intuitive, and we ran into a bunch of bugs on the Facebook platforms as well, right? I mean, the Facebook products, when it's to an end user, like it's Facebook or Instagram, they look much cooler and they work much better than their internal quote unquote types of products that are meant for other businesses to consume, because
yeah,
they probably don't have the same incentive in making those things better, because you got to use it if you have to reach these people, and they don't have to necessarily make it the coolest, nicest, fastest products. At least that was
no,
my opinion of their software. So so we went and signed up and we tried to create these campaigns, and we were trying to say, you know what, we need to sell our app, which is a project management platform. It can be used by project managers, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, teachers, professors, students, and it was basically anybody who wanted to get their lives organized. They could possibly use this. It's got its own set of features and unique selling propositions. Now,
yeah,
great, but that means we could sell it to the entire world essentially, right? But to sell it to the entire world, it's going to cost a ton of money, and it's not focused campaigns. And if I shared the first initial campaigns with you, not that we've gotten it anywhere near to being perfect, but if I shared the initial campaigns with you, you'd laugh, because it wouldn't make any sense, because the scope was too broad. It was
yeah.
reaching a broad range of people, and then we lived and learned, hopefully, to make those adjustments and tweaks. So I'm just giving you a quick background to real challenges we've run into. Hopefully that
Absolutely.
helps you sort of speak to how to go about doing this the right way.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been advertising on Facebook. Well, it's called Meta now, so I'll refer to it as Meta, but just know that is Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Messenger, all those, every suite of products that Meta owns that come under their umbrella. Now, I've been advertising on the platform since 2011, and I've seen a lot of changes. When I first started, there wasn't even any such thing as a pixel. And then we've got pixels, and then we've gone through data leaks, and we've gone through Apple privacy changes, and then we've had the advent of AI. There's been a lot of changes, a lot of it for the better. And now the latest thing with them is their Advantage Plus, which is what they call their AI. So basically, the advice that they give out at the moment is, hey, why don't you just put a campaign up, let us go and find the people, let us go and target them, let us go and get the conversions for you. So in your case, it might be app installs. And it's got to go out and find these people. But what we found is that it eventually will do that. If you have a very, very, very large budget and you're willing to cop a huge loss to start with, eventually the system will learn what your ideal customer is, and it will only target them. So big companies like Coke and Nike and things along those lines, they can afford to do this because they have massive budgets to churn through. But as small to medium business owners, software developers, that's not always feasible. So what we did is we developed a system. Now, our system is used to educate the AI and the algorithm on who our ideal customer is at a much, much cheaper rate. So as an example, if we're going out and we're trying to get app installs for your Snowpal app, we have to pay a premium dollar because it's a monetization based goal. So Meta knows that you're trying to get people to install the app, which in turn is a profit driven goal for you. So there is sales at the other end of it, or conversions at the other end of it. So what we do is we take a couple of steps back from trying to get that conversion straight away. And we try to take the AI and let it, and the algorithm, and go out to the 220 million people, and we put an ad in front of them for what we call brand awareness. Now, the reason that we do this is because initially we want users on the platform to self-filter themselves. So the algorithm is very strong. We put good creatives and good copy in there that make people aware that you are, or your app is, a potential solution to a problem that they have. If the person doesn't have that problem, the ad, whether it's the creative or the copy, is not going to resonate with them, and they will move on. That's the self-filtering part. If they have the problem and you have the solution in your ad, they will engage with it. So what we've got is we will have two groups of people. One lot of people who don't engage with it, and one lot of people that do engage with it. And that's the self-filtering part. And we do that at that brand awareness level because fundamentally people come to social media to be social. I don't go to Instagram or Facebook to try and solve a problem that I might have in my business. Like, I'm having trouble with project management and keeping things organized. I don't go, oh, you know what, I'll go find a solution on Facebook. We don't do that. We go to Google with very intent-based searches trying to find these things. But what we do is when we go to social media to be social, we're still acutely aware of the problems that we have. Those problems don't disappear. We're just not looking for a solution. So when an ad pops up in front of you that addresses your problem and provides a potential solution for you, you tend to engage with it.
So Dan, let me interrupt you there. You've said some very interesting things there. So just to repeat it, I'm not going to add value in repeating this, but I sometimes repeat it just so I can digest what the guest has said. So what you said is very interesting. You're saying, hey, if when we're on social media, whether we are on Instagram watching reels or on Facebook and whatnot, on social media in general, we are not necessarily looking for solutions to problems. Like, let's say after this podcast, I want to turn in and call it a day and maybe just watch some TV or watch some content. I'm just looking to be entertained, right? I'm not looking for solution. I mean, there's a number of different problems we have as a company, but I'm not looking for solutions. But like you mentioned, those problems don't disappear. They're there. You're not exactly looking for solutions, but if something came in the way of answering certain questions, you're like, you know what, I mean, I can relate to it, right? You're watching reels and one of them pops up and says B2B sales. I was not going to reels to look for those answers, but it does pick my interest and I'm going to react to it. But before we go there, what I want to ask you is this, sometimes, we have solutions for generic problems, right? To me, project management is a generic problem, and we are one of the providers. We have products, and there's other people who also have products, and we believe we are different in certain ways, and perhaps not in other ways. We have some similarities with other solutions. How do we target? The first question is, how do we target this group? Because Dan's a customer, Krish is a potential customer, everybody can be a customer. How do we first figure out to optimize the spend? Like you mentioned, if we have infinite amount of money, then it's not a problem, it's not a challenge. But here was our first challenge. Dan could benefit. Dan is probably using another platform, and I would rather Dan use our platform in lieu of that platform. But I have no idea when I'm going and reaching out to this from a B2C marketing advertising standpoint. What are some things we should know before we create that campaign?
So this is what we do. And this is why we do it. So let's say you're trying to get conversions. We need to look at data. Data is what tells us what's going on. On average, throughout North America, if we're looking for purchase conversions or app installs, the CPMs there, so the cost to show it to 1,000 people to get 1,000 impressions, sits around $50. At this top of funnel, at this first awareness stage that we're talking about, it costs us less than $5 CPMs. This is how we're creating our audiences. So this is the first stage to create our audience. So what we will do on the back of this, your creative needs to be on point. So at this stage, we prefer to use videos. So we'll have a video potentially demonstrating how the product works and what problems it solves. A very general based video, a general overview of what the product is or the app is. The copy will also address these things. Raise we like to use the AIDA principle. We want to agitate the problem. We want to pique their interest. We want to define that we can do what we can say we can do, and then we want to provide a solution to them. All in the copy. The video does the same thing. So what we're doing is once they engage with that ad, either by watching the video or clicking on the copy to read more, or liking or sharing or commenting on it, or potentially even clicking on the Learn More button going through to the website that has more information about it. In the background, we're creating custom audiences at this very cheap rate. Now, the custom audiences we create are people that have engaged with either us on our Facebook account, our Instagram account, or they've visited the website. So we create those three core audiences. Those three core audiences are showing us a group of people that have the problem that we've mentioned, and they're aware now that your app or product is the solution to that problem. It's at this stage then we move on to stage 2, using only those custom audiences that we've created, because those people have self-filtered. Remember, you're going to have one lot of people that are engaged and one lot of people that are disengaged. So the people that are engaged, we're making an assumption, and this assumption is correct most of the time, that they have the problem and they're interested in you as the solution because they've engaged with you. I will not engage with something I'm not interested in. Not at all.
Okay, so Dan, is there a step before that as well, right? Before you show it, how do you determine who do you show it to? Like, one of our initial challenges was, hey, should we pick Washington, D.C. as the region? Should we pick Virginia, the state of Virginia as region? Should we pick America as a region? Should we pick the whole continent of North America? You know what I mean? Each of it is
Yeah.
going to cost more. If you have a restaurant, then it's one thing, right? It's in the neighborhood. It doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to advertise this restaurant in Sydney. But when you have a software product, especially with SaaS, whether it's B2B or in this case, we're talking about the mobile app, how do you come up with this initial list?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's going to be unique to every brand. I mean, there's going to be things like how far you deliver it to, but you're a digital-based product, so you're a bit of software. So the world is your audience. The first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that your copy is very on point and that the video that you put is very defined as the solution to the problem that people are seeing. To your point about, do we go regional, state, country, continent, whole world? Facebook's a little bit different, or Meta's a little bit different. The broader you go, the cheaper it gets. The problem is, at that level, is if we go exceptionally broad, let's say if we go worldwide, the cheapest audiences are sitting in a lot of third world countries. Now, a lot of those countries, the people don't have the disposable income to be able to afford the service or product that we're offering. Facebook will tend to lean towards them because they are still engaging with it, because it is a solution to them, but it's just a solution they can't afford. But we can't determine that at this stage. So the way we do it is we have our I'll call them our big 5 countries that we tend to target. Now, we're going after English-speaking countries. I'm not as talented as you. I can't speak a second language, so I can't pretend to start writing copy in a second language or producing videos in a second language. So we go for our big 5 to start with, which is the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand. So, but we break them up into the regions because they all perform very differently. And we feel that if we start in the US predominantly, then we've got 220 million people there. It's a very good audience for the algorithm to learn on. And then what we do is we slowly expand to these other, what we call tier 1 countries.
Okay, so Dan, even within US, let's say if you took one of those countries, right? America is a huge country. It's like the 3rd largest country in the world. So do you when you actually go to Meta and you try to create this campaign, I ask this because we've done a number of different combinations, permutations, and combinations, and we feel like we've learned some. But I want to sort of hear it from the horse's mouth, if you will. You know what I
Yeah.
mean here, so I'll know that what we did was right, wrong, or it's in some phase of improvement.
Yep.
We would randomly go pick a city called Austin in
Yep.
Texas. Now,
Mhm.
did we have any rhyme or reason to pick Austin over Seattle, over Boston? Maybe, maybe not, right? I mean, there was like a hunch, a feeling of some sort, but there was no concrete evidence to say, you know what, you should go to, not to Salt Lake City in Utah, but you're going to go to Austin, for instance, right? So
Yep.
how do you narrow it down within a country? Again, I asked this, let me make it even more specific. If you took Australia,
Mhm.
and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the majority of the population lives along the coast, right?
Correct.
So it's just, you have like 30 million people, give or take, and a lot of the people are living along the coast, and maybe a lot of them are in one of the few major cities. I'm just speculating here.
No,
Could
you're
be
pretty much
Adelaide,
right.
could be Sydney, Perth, Melbourne, etc. The US, I feel, is different because every inch of the land, most of it is inhabitable, so to speak,
Yep.
right? So people are living everywhere. It's I don't know, 1.6, I think 3 million square miles of land.
Yep.
It's only Alaska where probably it's sparsely populated, but the rest of the country, the continental US, is not so much. So that was a real problem, Dan, was how do we pick which city to target?
So don't. So this is the whole point of what I'm saying with the self-filtering is that go to the entire country. Sometimes people have specific products or services that will only relate to male or female, so perhaps we could select gender. Some that are very specific to an age demographic, so we might put an age range in there. Other than that, leave it open. Let the algorithm go out and find. So what the algorithm does now, and the AI does, is it scans your copy on your ad, and it scans your images or your videos, and it determines what it is you're trying to say and the message that you're trying to get out and to who to put that message in front of. It's very, very intuitive. Don't try and outsmart it, just embrace it. And this is why at this top level, because it costs us so little, it's less than $5. I think we pay like about between 1 and 3 cents per engagement that a user has with these ads. So it's very, very cheap. So you can see if you put $20 into a campaign a day, you can build audiences of thousands of people that have engaged with you as a possible solution to their problem. So we don't need to try and guess which cities they're in. We let the algorithm go out and find them. And the longer we run those ads for, and these always stay on because we always want to keep bringing new people in. And just to clarify, we exclude anyone who's already been to the website or has engaged with us before or has previously downloaded the app because we just want to get the message out to new people. The longer it runs, the more data the ad account will hold, more data points it will have on every person that's engaged with you. So it will continue to go after similar people. Doesn't matter where they are in the United States. It'll continue to go after them. And we keep building those audiences, building those audiences, building those audiences. That's the self-filtering part. So instead of trying to guess about where our potential clients might be or customers might be, we go out and say to Facebook, go out, or Meta, go out and find these people based on the copy we've given you, based on the video, perhaps maybe a gender selection or an age, range demographic. But other than that, let's lean on the creative and the copy that we've got. Go out and find people that are going to engage with this. And we generate thousands and thousands and thousands of people in these audiences. Are all of them going to download your app? Absolutely not. But what we're going to do is we're going to put them into the next stage and we're going to educate them more about your app or your solution and how it's the right choice for them. At the next stage, once we've collected all these people that have engaged with us, we've created those 3 custom audiences. Remember, people that have engaged with us on Facebook, engaged with us on Instagram, or that visited the website. We exclude people that have already downloaded because people can download it at any stage of this customer journey. It's at this second stage that we encourage you to select 4 key components of your brand. So whether that is 4 unique selling propositions, 4 hooks that you might have for your product or your service, looking at topics like testimonials or reviews, how-tos, common questions that get asked quite a lot, we address them at this middle of funnel. It's at this middle of funnel that we look at getting reach to the audience that we've created of people that have engaged with us, that we've pre-qualified themselves as people that might be interested in downloading the product. At this stage, what we do, it's a little bit more technical, but we will ask brands like yourself to come up with 4 general ideas or unique selling propositions that you use to sell your product or your service. From that, we'll ask you to give us 3 bits of content, like 3 creatives for each of those 4. So we end up with 12 ads. Not as complicated as it sounds. One of them could just be reviews and testimonials. One of them could be product features. Another one could be a brand background. Another one could be what makes you different from your competitors. All questions that people tend to ask themselves before they make a decision about using your product or service. A good place to look for these questions and how you solve these problems is look at your support desk or the tickets that come through. If there's common questions that people are asking on your support desk or on the comments on your pages or emails that come through to you, those are going to be common questions that potential new customers might be consciously or subconsciously thinking about as well. So at this stage where we've got our custom audiences, we'll put 12 ads in front of them. And for the next 2 weeks, we're going to show them those ads. Each of those ads are going to get shown to them twice. And they're going to end up seeing 24 ads from us in those 14 days. Not the same one ad over and over again. We put rules in about frequency and how often they can see them. Because what we want to do, because they pre-qualified themselves as someone who might be interested in our solution, we now want to educate them about what it is about this solution would make it the right choice for them. So we want to, every day they come on to one of Meta's products, so Facebook, Instagram, we want to show them 2 ads. There'll be 2 different ads every time. It's not going to be the same thing over and over again, but we set up rules to make sure that they see it. Now, the reason that we do that is because there used to be a thing in marketing called the rule of 7. Now, this predates the internet. Now, this is where the research used to show that we used to have 7 touch points with a potential customer or client before they would exchange money for your product or service. Now, this used to be newspapers, television commercials, letterbox drops, door-to-door salesmen, radio announcements, things along those lines were touch points. Over the last few years, we have just been inundated with content. We consume so much content now that the latest data from Meta is that if you were to stack your news feed on itself, we consume the height of the Eiffel Tower every day as an individual.
Wow.
So it's a lot of content. So we're competing for people's concentration. So the strategy behind showing them 24 ads in a 2-week period is because the new rule is not a rule of 7. The new research suggests that we need to have between 19 and 21 touch points with a potential customer to gain their trust, to convert them as a client. The other thing that it enables us to do is alleviate any doubt they might have about your product or service, and it also answers any questions they either consciously or subconsciously have. Well, why should I use this instead of the product that I'm using now? How long have these guys been around for? What are other people saying about it? Is it compatible with my iPhone? What if I've got a desktop and I want to use it on my PC? What's their support like? Who are these guys? All these sorts of questions when something new is introduced to you, we address during that time. And again, we do it at a very, very, very cheap rate. Again, we sit under about $5 CPMs to retarget those people that have already shown a level of interest and engagement with us. At that stage, we use a combination of images and videos. But what we know is that by the end of that stage, people know everything that they need to know about us. We haven't wasted any spend on people who aren't interested in the product. At that stage, they've already shown an interest and we market to them there. Does that make sense?
Oh,
How
it
I
makes so much sense, Dan. I'm quiet because I'm trying to digest all of this. It makes remarkable amount of sense. I'm going to recap this in my own
Sure.
words and tell me if I understood it the way I
It
should
was a
have,
lot. So yes,
right?
this is
Yeah.
good.
So I'm going to start from, go back many steps, right? Because you said a number of things that are super important here. I'm going to talk the less technical way because I don't have the skills anywhere near the
Sure.
skills that Dan has. So there is a product, and we as a company made a product and we want to sell it, right? I'm going to start with the very basic
Yep.
stuff. We're like, okay, we need to reach a group of people so we can socialize the product with them and then see if they're interested and then make the sale, right? I'm just
Yep.
talking through as like a little kid who's learning this.
Yep.
uh, the first questions that come to our minds is, hey, how should I go about doing this? Should I be using Meta? Should I be using Google? Should I be using Pinterest? Should I be using which company should I go with? Then let's say, for the purpose of this conversation, let's say we've arrived at Meta because, according to one of the last earnings reports, right? I think it was not this one, maybe the previous one. From what I read through that earnings release quickly, I believe they reach one of two people in the world every day, right? I
Yeah.
think the population is like 8 billion, and I think they reach like 3 to 4 billion, 3 to 3.5 billion people every single day engage with one of Meta's products. It could be WhatsApp, could be Instagram, could be Facebook, doesn't matter,
Yeah.
but there is an engagement there, right? So there is no other solution. Even when I was not particularly pleased with the Meta platform, the tools that I was using to create the campaigns, I used to complain. Then I should ask myself, what other options do we really
Yeah.
have here, right? We're going to have to engage because they are, they're a cool company, but they have this reach. They provide us with this reach, right? So we agree on, sure, I want to go with Meta. And now the next step is, do I go with Facebook? Is my audience a little bit older? Do I go with Instagram? Do I go with WhatsApp? Depending on where I'm going to be reaching those people. Because, from what I remember, if you're in Brazil or India or one of those countries, WhatsApp probably could be a better tool. At least, I mean, I could be wrong. Yeah, I'm just saying from what I remember, than Instagram, because I don't know what the user base of WhatsApp in the US is, but Instagram at the time was a better platform than WhatsApp if we want to reach the audience in the US
Yeah.
versus audience in India, right? So those are some early decisions that every business would need to make. Now we've made those decisions. You're creating your campaign and you're putting it out there, and you said, do not worry about whether it's Austin or Salt Lake City. It
Yep.
doesn't matter. Let the algorithm dictate that for you. I have a couple of
Correct.
questions for you there about the campaign, the color, the image, the graphic, the text, and whatnot, because we've had our campaign be rejected more than once, and Facebook auto rejects it, saying, "Oh, you know what? You have too many words there, or you have too few words, for instance." And it was very difficult for us to figure out why in the world it was rejected before we
Yep.
could work through that. I want to ask you some of those questions, but I'm recapping what you mentioned earlier, so I
Yep.
will ignore that for a second. So we say, okay, you know what? This is step one. We send it to a bunch of people and see what happens. And you mentioned that, look at the engagement. Did someone like it? Did they comment on it? How long did they watch the video? All of these metrics that probably, Meta gives us, and
Yep.
come up with this subset of people. Now, the initial campaign may have been sent out to 100,000 people. 1,000 people engaged with the campaign. So now you focus your next set of ads. You mentioned 24 ads as a subsequent, step. You reach out to only those 1,000 people.
Yep.
And you mentioned that the rule of seven earlier said you have to have seven touch points. But now with this content that people consuming at the height of equal to the height of Eiffel Tower on a daily basis, you mentioned that's three times as much, which is 21 touch points now, right?
Yep.
So it's 21 touch points. And the hope is you showed not the same ad in a
No.
certain frequency, a bunch of different ads, show it 21 times, and now people get used to your product, the platform, and you answer all the questions that they might have. And the question that you want to try and answer is based off of the tickets that you might have in your support. Hey, I
Yep.
don't understand how this thing works. I don't understand how that thing works. You try to sort of answer those questions via these ads and then send it to the 1,000 people and have 21 touch points with them so
Yep.
they can actually have these questions answered. Now, I've tried to sort of summarize
No,
some
you've
of
done a
what we
good job
said.
of it.
Did I capture a good set of
Absolutely.
what you said there?
And you've absolutely covered it exactly as I explained it. The beauty of this is we're not talking about big budgets here either. I'm not saying, hey, Krish, you need to spend $1,000 on trying to develop this audience or create this audience and then spend another $1,000 a day on targeting that particular audience. We do this for $20 a day on each of those campaigns. So you can spend $20 a day to go out and prospect, to go out and find people who might be interested in your solution. And then you can spend another $20 a day only targeting those people that have shown a level of interest in your product or service as the solution. Pretty cheap.
Yep. And Dan, I'll add one more thing there. It's funny you should say that because uh, when we do, we are a small company, right? We do a number of different things. So, our ad budget, we have to use it very carefully. And I will say this, we've not used it very carefully in the past. So it's like, every drop makes an ocean, right? So we were like, hey, it's $20 here, it's $50 there. And then at the end of the month, when you tally everything that we've spent on Apple ads and Apple search ads and
Yep.
meta ads and whatnot, that number is a lot bigger than you may have anticipated, right? So here is what I want to share with people who are, in addition to what you said there, at least if they don't want to make the same mistakes that we've made in the past and probably
Yep.
continue to do so to some extent, is you could spend the $20 or $50 and feel like it's not a lot of money because it's not like a TV ad where you're spending millions of dollars. It's not a Super Bowl ad, right? But that said, these things can add up, and we've seen that it adds up. It has added up for us in the past, and I want to say people have to be a little bit careful about what that spend looks like. And I have a couple of questions for you in that regard. One of the
Sure.
questions is, uh, do you start with? And let me give a bit more context. And I'm not even making this up, Dan. I'm not manufacturing this example. Let's say we want to have an ad, and we're gonna want to spend $50 on it. There are times as a startup we've done this. We're like, you know what? If I went out for dinner on a Friday evening, it'll cost me, we are vegetarian, so it's not steak and none of those expensive things. It's not lobster, but still, Washington D.C. is not the cheapest city. I mean, we live a few miles out, but still, you're talking a decent dinner, a nice place could cost close to $100, right? And this
Yep.
is even without alcohol, right? It's close to. I don't know why even Indian food costs $100, but that's a different problem. Nothing to do with what we're talking about here.
Yep.
We were like, you know what? Maybe today I'm going to skip that nice dinner, just eat something that's cheap, maybe a sandwich, and put that money into an Instagram ad. And we've actually done this many a times, right? And I'm just talking to what you said earlier. It's $20, it's $50, and we can figure out where to get that money from. And I say this because it's a real challenge for startups, right? How much money do we spend on ads and where do we get the money from? And sometimes, it doesn't come from big budgets. It comes from small sacrifices. I just want to mention that because that's
Yeah.
happens to us all the time. You know what? I'm not going to buy this polo shirt from Abercrombie for $70. I'm going to use that money on a Facebook ad, for instance,
Yeah.
right? So that's something I want to add there. But the question I want to ask there to you, Dan, is when we talked about creating the ad, you mentioned 24 ads. I mean, that's a lot of ads, and if you don't have a creative team that can think creatively to creating these ads, how do you go about creating these ads? Because that's a real challenge we continue to
Yep.
have as well, right? How do you go about creating
So
nice looking ads so people
it's not
will
it's
react
not
to it?
24 ads. It's 12. It's 12 ads that they see twice during that 2 week period.
Okay.
So when we break it down to 12, we're not trying to create TV commercials with each of these ads. One of them could be an image of a screenshot of a 5-star review from a real person that's downloaded and used your app. It could be a screenshot of your overall rating in the App Store. It could be a video of you recording your screen on your iPhone or Android device about how to install the app. Do you see what I mean? Like we're not trying to sell. You're trying to solve a problem and you're trying to answer questions that your clients might be asking. That could be an image that says, it's compatible with iPhone, Android, and desktop. Those images where you have tick, 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 something like that. If you wanted to do another image comparing yourself to another brand about why they should pick you, list off the same features. You still would have seen these comparison ones. Software love
Right.
to do it. It's like, yeah, we're compatible with iPhone. They're compatible with iPhone. They're compatible with Android. We're compatible with Android. We cost less than X amount per month. Cross for them because they cost way too much. We work on PC. Tick, they don't. Give them a cross. And you the benefits keep listing for yours. You've got some similarities, but hey, they don't have all these extras that we do. That's another ad. A video testimonial from a client, or a video from you. You're not adverse to getting it on the camera. A video from you saying, hey, look, when we started this business or this company, our dream was to do this and we wanted to solve this problem. We've been around working on this solution for you for the last 6 years. And we're so excited to bring it to market, and we believe that it'll be this bit of software that will take your business to the next level. Introduce yourself.
Dan, these are, everything that you're telling here is so important. And I hope, folks are watching this or listening to this, depending on how they consume the podcast, even if they're not actually in the business of selling, because, I want to say that they could be a developer, they could be an architect, and they'll be like, hey, it's not my problem, it's my sales team's problem. I'm going to talk to those people right now and tell them that, hey, it is your problem. Because,
Yeah,
we used to think that advertising and marketing was only a problem for the sales people and the marketing people and somebody else. And then soon enough, you recognize everybody's in the business of selling in the company, selling something to somebody at some level, right? It
yeah,
could be selling to third party or selling to your own team member that you have to build this feature or whatnot, right? So
yeah.
I think sales is part of everything that we do. And I wouldn't have said this a year ago because I was ignorant then, and hopefully I'm less ignorant now. And the only reason I mentioned that is, at least one of the reasons, there's many reasons I mentioned that, uh, we have to take it upon ourselves to learn what works and what doesn't work. And that therein lies a challenge there, right, Dan? So for a developer who's watching this, or for an early stage founder, let's say there are two people who start a company or building software and they're watching or listening to this,
Yeah.
what, this is overwhelming, and I'll tell you why it is also overwhelming. Because you don't have a creative team, and what you mentioned here is, hey, you may not have to have the a Coca-Cola like ad, for instance, right?
Yeah.
You can have an ad, like you gave many different beautiful examples. But let me ask you a question directly related to that. Are we then saying that, if you went years ago, 10 years, 20 years ago, when I grew up, many, many, many years ago, you saw these really popular people on TV, right?
Yeah.
And in today's example or context, let me take Scarlett Johansson
Yep.
or DiCaprio, or
Yeah.
maybe it's some newer actors that I don't know about. Are we saying that it's not necessary that Scarlett Johansson talks about your product for people to have an impression? Has social media changed this? Have influencers changed all of this so even common people can actually make an impression on a sale? Is that is that true, Dan, as we speaking right now?
I think absolutely. Provided that the person who is presenting the information to the potential customer is relatable to them. I don't think that Scarlett Johansson would be a great figurehead for an app that you've got. I think someone like you sitting there talking about why you created this app and why your team has worked so hard on it and what you hope to achieve by creating the app, there will be more relatable pieces of information coming from you to the potential consumer than any celebrity could bring, because you're solving a problem. You had a problem, you identified a problem, you provided a solution for it. Keep in mind as well, you don't need a creative team. The amount of software we have now available is so vast. If you just look at something as simple as Canva, you can use Canva to create, they've got so many templates in there for Facebook and Instagram ads. You can just modify it to suit your brand. Here's a crazy idea as well, Krish. So I record the conversation we're having today. I record this video that we're doing. It's on another screen here. You launch the podcast with the episode on it. I get someone to chop up 15 different bits of information that I speak about here, and that forms part of my content strategy. And that then goes out. Now, have I put in any extra effort to do that? Absolutely not, because I'm here talking to you anyhow. You could do the same. You could chop up bits of me talking or bits of you talking, and you could use that as content. And this is how we decide what content works. More often than not, if you're going to be advertising on the platform, you've got some sort of presence there. I imagine you've got a Facebook page or an Instagram account. What you do is you post it organically on those pages. If it resonates with your audience organically, chances are it's going to make a good ad, because the platform is user first. It wants the best experience for their users, because Meta, it doesn't charge anything for you to be on the platform, but it's still one of the most wealthy companies in the world. The way it makes money is you're the commodity, you're the product. If you're using it for free, you're the product. So it wants to
Absolutely.
keep you happy and wants to keep you on the platform. So if I put something up organically and everyone likes it, watches it, responds to it, reacts to it, engages with it, that will make a great ad. It's a great way to test whether the creative you've got is going to work or not.
So, Dan, just to recap the second part of what you said there, again, a number of useful items is even if you don't have a creative team, the tools today, and Canva is a lovely example, right? I mean, we used to use so many tools in the past,
Oh,
and we've actually not discontinued using a number of tools in lieu of Canva. And even where Canva does not do a great job, like I'll give you an example where if you're creating a website on Canva and if you have to make it responsive on mobile, that's one of the things that they have yet to figure out. I'm sure they will, but it's very difficult because we're working on one right now. You can place these icons and elements, and the mobile version of it looks horrendous, and you have to kind of make these adjustments, and it takes a little
yeah,
bit of time, but eventually get it working. And the reason I mentioned that is even where it's a beautiful product, and even where it falls a bit short, we've actually as a team told ourselves, you know what, we don't want to look for alternatives because this kind of does the job, and we it saves us time. So we are okay with compromising on certain things that it doesn't do so well, in lieu of other things that it could do, which to me is amazing, right? Imagine us convincing ourselves about a product that we thought is actually sometimes is falling short, but it's still providing so much value that we want to
yeah,
continue using it. So it's amazing. And not related, but I know they are based out of Australia, right? I
they
know the
are.
founder is based out of Australia, right?
Yeah, they are. They're based out of Melbourne, the founders.
And I read an article. I'm sorry, I forget the founder's name, but she had mentioned that, like all of us, any number of them rejected them, and she had flown over to like San Francisco like n number
Yeah.
of times, and nobody wanted to invest. And finally, fast forward many years, things change, which is super inspiring as well. But I digress. That's a great. You
So,
mentioned. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so what I was going to say is don't get too caught up with the creative about it being perfect, because this is what I say to clients, like, and to our own team, is perfect is the enemy of done. So you've just got to take imperfect action, because if you're constantly waiting for something to be perfect, you'll never take action, because nothing is ever perfect. But if you take action, adjust, take more action, adjust it again, and you keep doing that, firstly, if you do make bloopers or a typo, it shows you're a real person. We're not spending Coca-Cola's advertising budget. You're a small startup or a medium-sized business. You're real people on the other end, more often than not bootstrapped. So, I'm not saying push something out there that doesn't represent your brand in a good light, but if it's not perfect, don't worry about it too much.
And you make
Um,
a great point there. Please continue. That's a very important point that I think people have to recognize. I'm speaking to
yeah,
myself when
and
I say that. Yeah.
so that's where this $20 a day comes in for this advertising for each of those campaigns. So let's say you're spending $40 on your advertising now. You're taking some action. There's another couple of mechanisms that come into play here, and I'm mindful of the time that we have together. But the first is, if you don't know how to run ads or do a particular process, if you invest some money in it, I guarantee you will learn it quicker than if you try to learn it by watching YouTube videos or listening to people or going to conferences. Because you've invested money in it, you'll invest your time in it, and you don't want to waste your money, and you will continue to learn and make adjustments to get it right because your money is sitting behind it. Like you said, you're making some sacrifices to put the money into this to grow the business. You're going to make sure it's working correctly. Is it going to be perfect when you first do it? No, but you'll continue to look at it daily and you will optimize and correct it as you need to. The second part of this strategy, the beauty of it, is I designed this strategy when Apple brought in the new privacy laws. iOS 14 came in. And they said, right, we're not going to allow you just to automatically track users around on Apple devices anymore. They have to opt in to have that happen. We're going to be seeing a cookieless internet in the not too distant future either, where Google's not going to be sharing cookie information. They're going to allow you to cookie users. Now, the beauty of this system is that I developed it so that we're going to make people aware that you're a solution to the problem. We're going to present lots of different reasons why they should take you up as a solution to their problem. From there, we can advertise further to them to get the app installed, let's say in your example. But guess what else people do now? So people are acutely aware of you and they know all the features and the benefits that you have and that you solve the problem that they have. People, a lot of the time, go from social media then over to Google. They enter your name in. They type your app name in. They put in Snowpal app, iOS, Snowpal app, Apple. They go to Google with intent. That's what Google is. Google is an intent-based platform. People go there. They know the problem. They either look to solve the problem through what they're typing into there, or they type in the solution to the problem that they've been made aware of through this system I just explained. Guess where else they get picked up? They get picked up in the App Store. They go across to the App Store, they'll search for you in there. Or they've been to your website, they've filled in your pop-up or your sign-up form to get more information about it, or they've taken up a free trial. You can then email market to them. We're not just building a fence around them on Meta. Educating them on this platform is going to result in more sales through Google, more sales through the App Store, more sales through your email marketing, because that awareness doesn't go away. We can't just operate in isolation and say, well, it's an all or nothing proposition. They're either going to be on Instagram or not. No, it's a tool we use, much like we used to have billboards everywhere and TV commercials and radio announcements and newsletters in your letterbox. It's the same thing. We're educating people. We're building trust. We're building relationships. Does it matter where they convert after we've done all this? No. If they don't convert on Meta, will they convert other places? Absolutely. Because we're not tribal enough to go, well, if I can't do this on Facebook, I'm not going to do it at all. We use multiple platforms every day.
Dan, I have a couple of questions. As we get to the tail end of this is amazing. When I'm going to say that, if there's a developer or an architect watching this who predominantly writes code and doesn't do campaigns, they will recognize the value of what you've shared here when they actually start doing those campaigns. Because, a lot of what you mentioned here, I promise you, resonates with me directly, because I've actually gone through the exercise of doing a number of those things. But if I rewind and put myself in a situation where I had not done those things and I listen to what you're saying here, a lot of them are just going to go over my head. But one other thing I also want to say is, in terms of language that people use in companies, in a software company, people say, hey, this is the technical team, this is the sales team, this is the marketing team and whatnot. To me, it's funny because this conversation couldn't be any more technical to me, right? Everything that you've said here, parts of it subjective, parts of it quantitative, but it's very difficult to understand because it's a difficult problem, right? Everything that you've said here, creating a campaign, going through this process, and we've sort of just skimmed the surface. So I want people to recognize that everything that you do in building a product and shipping it, distributing it, and deploying it and selling it is very technical. It's just that the nature of the technicality is different. Sometimes it's technical when it comes to binaries, zeros and ones. Other times it's technical in some for the other facets, but I at least want people to appreciate the fact that every role in a company is just as important, if not more important than the other role. And I say this out of the blue if you're thinking randomly, because I know a lot of developers who are wonderful people and great engineers, but who sometimes feel like what they are doing is the most difficult thing or the most important thing.
Yeah,
And when I hear that these days, I smile to myself thinking, you know what, you have no idea about the type of challenges you're actually potentially going to run into, and then you're going to readjust your thought process and say, you know what, writing code is actually not difficult, and nowadays it's become easier with Copilot and whatnot, right?
yeah,
There are other number of other things that are a whole lot harder to do than actually writing the software.
absolutely. And look, what I've explained today is not a simple process. If it was simple, everyone would do it. What I've explained to you has taken years of development, and it's taken a lot of trial and error and a lot of my own money to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So to think that we can listen to a call and know everything that we need to do straight away is silly, really. It'd be like you trying to teach me how to code an app in a 1 hour session. You could give me some ideas, but for me to go away and do that's going to be very hard. But what you do need to do, I think, is have an understanding of what other people do within your business. And once you have that understanding, when they come and ask for things or they have questions of you, it makes a lot more sense to you. So if they ask you to, can you explain, the difference between your app and our main competitor's app? What is it that our app does better? You will know, okay, well, Dan's probably looking at trying to put some creative together that talks about the advantages of our app over the other app. And in turn, he's going to put that in front of customers who might already be a customer of the other app, and we're trying to get them across. So it's not a question of ability or a question of, well, what are you actually doing or why is it better? It's a question of, hey, let's go to market with this competitive advantage. The same thing is like, let's say you go out and you engage a agency to run your meta ads, but you have no idea what they're doing, so you have to believe what they're telling you. The better investment of your money is having an idea about what it is that you're trying to achieve. Um, Going through some points like I've talked about today about getting people to select themselves into certain audiences and marketing to them, and understanding that we need to have all these touch points with them and the different things that we want to talk to them about before we convert them. Better to know that and ask those questions to the agency about how they're going to achieve that, and let them do the technical aspects of it, than just know nothing at all, and all we know at the end of the month is whether the results are good or bad. So yeah,
You know,
it's
Dan, anybody watching this, it's going to be very obvious to them that that someone like you has done this long enough and is good at what you're doing, right? And I say this, I mean it honestly, because it's one thing to, I have 10 people reach out to me daily saying, I can do this for you, I can do that for you. That's an email. And then I go to their website and I'm not convinced, right? But
yep,
then you talk to somebody, just a few minutes in the quality of what you mentioned here and the depth of what you've said, even at times where you can't always go to all of the details, it gives us a very good picture. So I know it's just amazing the things you've shared. I know we are at the top of the hour. I don't know if I have a couple of questions. Do you have another 10 minutes or?
sure. I've got
Okay.
10 more minutes.
Okay, perfect. We can wrap this up quickly. Yep.
Sure.
There's a lot more, and we can even pick this up at a later
Oh, look,
time.
there's a lot more we could talk about, even with the conversion side of things. But I think if you can build these foundations out correctly, it'll go a long way to make life
Yeah,
easier.
two very quick. I'll use the 10 minutes carefully. Yep. The first question is, uh, two questions. I'm trying to see which one to ask first. It doesn't really matter. People are watching this thinking, I'm trying to create ads for different regions, different parts of the world. How much do I need to know about that country? Because, even if your graphic doesn't need to be perfect, like we said, we don't need to let the perfect come in the way of the good. But the challenge we've had is we create a single ad, put that for Sydney, for Perth, to Oklahoma, to
Hmm.
Bombay, to Ghana, to Ireland, and then we realize, what, this thing doesn't work in certain places, certain parts of the world. It does work in other parts of the world.
Yep.
So there are remarkable cultural differences, and no matter whether you like it or not, from what I've seen, you're going to have to create ads that resonate with audiences in that part of the world. So this could be a broad answer, but if you have to answer this sort of quickly, how do you recommend people go about it?
I recommend you start where your core audience is. In this case, we use the United States as an example. Then branch out to other regions that obviously English speaking, because we've got all the creatives and the copy written in English or spoken in English. Look at like the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. You are covering off on hundreds of millions of people then.
But then,
And
how different should the ads, even with these English speaking countries, how
no,
different do you think the ads should be between
I
those
don't think
countries?
I don't think they need to be, because fundamentally, yes, there will be some extreme cases where a different region has a totally different way that we need to communicate with them. But with those core countries that I spoke about before, you and I, if we're in business together, if we're in business, whether you're an Indian American, I'm based over here in Australia, our societies are very different, our interests are very different, but fundamentally, we're going to have the same problems when it comes to business. And that's where you need to address it. We solve these problems. These are why you should choose us to solve these problems. Here's some history about our brand. Here's some reviews. Those core fundamentals of marketing are going to be the same. It's the stages of awareness
Okay,
about
perfect, right?
where people move through that. It doesn't matter what environment we're from. It's just how we communicate those messages to them.
Okay, my second question is, someone who believes that they've built this unique product that's really good and it solves real problems and it's one of a kind, yada yada yada. Uh, why should I worry about advertising or marketing? Is that a fair question?
It is. How would people know about it if you didn't?
Yeah, no, I asked that poorly. It was sort of a genuine question and a rhetorical question, but let me rephrase the question.
Sure.
Uh, Sometimes we believe what we have is so unique and so cool that the world will find it one way or the other. I, by virtue of experience and having done this, I know that's not true.
Yeah.
First of all, my question to you, Dan, is that true? And if it's not, uh, how do you help people understand that it's not true, that advertising is not optional, but it has to be a core part of what you're doing and spending?
It has to be part of your business. Okay, so if we're taking digital products as an example, we don't have a geographical location. We've got signage up somewhere and we've got word of mouth where people can walk into our shop and buy our product off us. Yes, if it is a truly unique product and you might get lucky and it goes viral organically. Who knows? It possibly could. I'm not going to suggest that it can't. Look at that Hawk Tour girl that went viral over nothing. Okay, so the whole world knows about her without her advertising because she went viral.
But the
What I'm
odds
trying
are
to
not
say,
in the favor, right, Dan? The odds are not in favor of that
absolutely not.
happening.
Like, you've got to do something sensational for it to go viral, or something drastically different for it to go viral. Um, and most of us aren't in that business of having something so life changing and world changing that it is going to go viral. I think we need to get our messages out there. Um, the
No, I
biggest
think
brand
that
in
I
the world.
think that answers the
Here's the best example for you. We all know what McDonald's is. We all know what Coca-Cola is. We all know what Nike is.
but there are still ads, right?
There you go.
All the
So
time.
even though we recognize at an instant what it is, we see the colors and we know who it is. We see the swoosh, we know who it is. They still advertise to us, don't they? Why?
Perfect.
Because they need to. It's an essential part of their marketing machine.
Important point, and we have a minute. So I'm going to ask you a simple, non-technical question, which
Sure.
I ask of all my guests actually. What is your favorite food? And if it's not something that everybody would know, if you could just explain that as well.
Favorite food. I do a slow cooked massaman curry.
Is
So
that
it's a Thai curry.
Thai curry? Okay.
Yeah, it's a beef. It's a red curry, or it's called massaman, Massaman, and it has potatoes, and I think you call them taro, sweet potatoes in it as well. You serve it with rice. I love it. It's my favorite food.
And is that your favorite food in Thai food in Australia, or is that favorite food in the US when you're visiting here?
No, it's my favourite food at home that I make.
Oh, lovely. Awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Any questions for me, Dan, or before we call it wraps?
No, no questions. Just look, I really appreciate your time today. It's been great chatting with you. This is part of what I do. I love to meet new people. We're very insular with what we do online. We talk, we don't, we're quite often behind our desks, so, and we don't get out as much. And it's really great to meet new people, talk about different experiences, ask different questions. It's fantastic. So thank you for today.
Oh no, thanks for your time. And we'll include links to your LinkedIn profile, but also if there's any other links like your company links and whatnot, just let us know. That way, we'll get when you publish them to Spotify and Apple and on like 7 different platforms. We have all of those
Absolutely.
links in place. Yeah,
I'm
awesome. And
looking.
again, folks, the conversation we had today was with Dan, and you can tell from the quality of this conversation, quality of what Dan chatted with us, that he's Dan and his team are going to be amazing people for you to reach out to if you need any help in the space of what we've discussed and beyond. So thank you for taking the time, Dan, who again is a former homicide detective, but is now in the business of helping people be successful by running campaigns and whatnot on Meta and beyond. I think with that, we're going to call it wraps. Until next time, thanks everybody.
Thank you.